Hey guys, Chari5 here, and happy Halloween! We finally reached the end of Creepy Month, and I have to say, I knew I was going to feel this way. I knew I was going to feel like, I don't know, maybe it's a part of my anxious personality, or, I don't know. It's a psychological thing where I feel really uncomfortable once something is coming to an end, and I really, once something becomes the new normal, I really don't want it to stop. And I feel like Creepy Month always tends to be that for me, because it's like it's 31 consecutive days of uploading and uploading and uploading and doing things and doing things. It has been stressful, I have to say, you know, trying to keep up with the consistency instead of chilling out every so often. Usually the times I upload these, or like I've been uploading these, is like way past midnight. It started out as like a little bit before midnight to around midnight to a little bit after midnight to like now almost at like 3 in the morning. And it's just because I've been so busy with other things during the day that I just don't get a chance to sit down and, like, already I'm recording these, so I kind of get sick of it, like after 3 hours of drawing the same thing, and, you know, stressing out over it a little bit, having a little less leniency, because like when I do other speed paint drawings, which, you know, it's kind of cool that I've been doing this more and more on my channel, these sort of little retrospectives, and I'm gonna keep doing them. I don't care that these aren't getting the attention that I want them to, because it's more so what I want to do. I want to expand my art, and just talk. You know, I think it's something that I like doing, because I don't really get to do it often, aside from in my videos and in my streams. I don't really talk a lot other than that, and it's very therapeutic for me, I think, to get my voice out there, even if it's for just a little bit, and maybe even if I'm not heard, you know, like it's just therapeutic for me to talk. But yeah, if you've watched all of them, if you just marathon them, I don't know, thank you so much. How have you put up with my voice for so long? But I do thank you for that. It's cool to have this little relationship of, you know, just you listening to me. But no, definitely thank you so much for sticking by me this creepy month. I think I actually might just do this again next year, but maybe this time I finally will do what I've always said I wanted to do, which is get ahead of myself, because usually I say I'm going to do that, and then I'm indecisive of whether or not I want to do Creepy Month again, and then I do, and then it's too late. Just like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm starting, and now there's no possible way I can get ahead of myself now, because otherwise I'm going to burn out. And I burned out like once or twice during this year, but it's whatever. So I left the best for last. Me personally, my personal favorite Universal monster is Count Dracula, the very first vampire, and it's funny because I think the reason why he's my favorite is most likely because he's such a god mod character, and he's just super interesting on top of it. Like it also might have to do with the fact that I liked Batman so much as a kid. But I've always found the concept of vampires, and Count Dracula specifically, super interesting, and they've been adapted in so many different ways, like the fantasy of a vampire. So, when I was a kid, to me, like, Count Dracula was a concept, you know, a lot like a lot of other, you know, monsters, like, oh, the Wolfman, or Frankenstein, or the Mummy, or whatever, you know, like, these were all concepts to me. These were all monsters that always existed. They were legends that were always present. They were always there. And they had no, like, real beginning. They just always were there. And in a way, they kind of were, you know, like there's a reason why I believed that. There's a reason why I thought, oh, it was always there. So, it's funny that Frankenstein predates Count Dracula, because Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was written in 1818, which, holy crap, that's a long time ago. And Bram Stoker's Dracula was written in 1897. And I I actually think we own a copy of Bram Stoker's Dracula back in Mexico, and the reason why I never decided to read it, and I still haven't read it yet, is because I always assumed, and this was really dumb of me, I always assumed that Bram Stoker's Dracula was an adaptation of the Dracula legend. I didn't know that Bram Stoker himself was the one that created Dracula. I thought that the novel was an adaptation of, a pre-existing legend. And so whenever I heard Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was like, okay, well, that's like James Cameron's Avatar, shit like that. Like, oh, okay, well, this is... I didn't think of it as an original concept, even though I guess Avatar is sort of an original concept by James Cameron, even though it's just dancing with wolves but with aliens. But my point being, because it was prefaced with a name, I always identified it as like, this is an adaptation of it. You don't hear J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. Like, you always just hear Harry Potter. You kind of know from the get-go who wrote Harry Potter. And then, like, you could hear tomorrow, like, oh, E.L. James is Harry Potter, because it's like, it's a different author. Please, no, E.L. James, don't touch Harry Potter. But, like, that's what I'm getting at. It was weird to me to hear the name of the story be prefaced by its author. And that's why I always assumed, like, there was another author of the original story. And then I'd heard, like, when I was older that Count Dracula actually existed. And no, he didn't, but he was inspired on Vlad the Impaler, or Vlad III, who was also called Dracula. Dracula, I believe, means son of the dragon, or something like that. It's something to do with dragons. And it actually gave birth to the legend of werewolves. Remember how I was saying during the Wolfman episode that I don't know which came first, if vampires or werewolves, and the whole infection thing? Apparently vampires started it, more specifically Bram Stoker's Dracula. The idea is, even Dracula is considered in the story, in Bram Stoker's novel, he's considered to be a werewolf, a type of werewolf, which to me is really, really weird, because again, I think that's another thing that makes Dracula so cool. He's so mysterious. And he's seen and he's talked about so much in legend. He's very classy. He's very handsome. He's very, in certain adaptations, he's very seductive. He's a very sexual being. But why I always found him so interesting as a kid, honestly, I couldn't really tell you. I think it was mainly because I thought the design was cool, like the very pale skin. Despite the fact that as a kid and as a teenager, I never liked dressing up. I hated dressing up for special occasions. Like, to me, it was always a drag. And maybe that was just me being a kid and a teenager. I don't know. But now, like, I don't know. I kind of like getting all formally dressed up for no real good reason. It just, it's such a childish thought process, but it kind of makes me feel a bit more mature for some reason. So now, like, I look at Dracula's design in a different light, but also in a kind of similar light. Like, when I was a kid, I thought he looked cool. He looked all fancy and like, oh, he has a cape and all that, and he turns into a bat. That's really cool. And like, he sucks blood and he has fangs. I guess the idea of fangs was always really cool to me. And now that I'm older, I still agree with that thought process. Like, oh, I still think he's a really cool guy, or a cool character, but I also think he's cool for different reasons. He has his own castle. He's the master of so many abilities, and he looks damn good in a suit. And it's no wonder that very often Dracula is seen as sort of the leader of these monsters, or at least like the head of them, despite with Frankenstein being a very close, like, second in command. And I think it's because in a way Dracula just has more presence as a monster, whereas Frankenstein's monster kind of has a bit more, he's more emotional as a character, you know? He's less scary. We're scared of him because of the way he looks, but not because of who he is. Whereas Count Dracula is the exact opposite. We're not scared of the way he looks. We're scared of what he is. And sometimes his looks, but that really depends on what iteration of it is you're looking at. And it really goes to show just how long and how much presence this character has, to the point where so many adaptations of Bram Stoker's Dracula there have been, and how many adaptations of his characters there are. Van Helsing, for example, I remember, I think it was a 2000-something movie named Van Helsing, who was a vampire slayer. And I never, again, since I never read the novel or anything, I did not know that Van Helsing and Count Dracula hailed from the same novel. In fact, I thought Van Helsing was a brand new character for this movie series. And it's funny, too, because I don't think the two characters are really related all too much when it comes to media. Like, if it's Van Helsing, it's Van Helsing. If it's Count Dracula, it's just Count Dracula. You never really see the two interacting in settings very often when it comes to, like, when it comes to derivative work. It's one or the other. And Van Helsing, Abraham Van Helsing, is seen as a vampire slayer, and his mortal enemy in the novel is Count Dracula. You know, they are opposites of each other. He knows how to stop the curse, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes down to, like, films, and I know that probably a lot of films that have, like, Van Helsing feature Count Dracula as, like, the main bad guy, but I never put the two characters together. Again, I always thought Van Helsing was a new character, and as it turns out, they're from the same novel. And actually, from what I understand, Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, he's not even really the main character in it. Like, he's the entity that we're told about. There's another protagonist in the book that, like, seeks out the help of Dr. Van Helsing, you know, to stop Count Dracula. And, you know, he's Transylvanian, and, you know, it's funny that I think Count Dracula is the one character who, despite all the derivative work that there has been in media, comic books, movies, cartoons, all that, Dracula is probably one of the characters that least gets changed from what he is. Even if vampires themselves, the concept of vampires themselves, you know, changed. Like, for example, Twilight had its own version of it. And honestly, like, I was on the whole hate train of Twilight. It was like, oh, it's a stupid teen movie, blah, blah, blah. And in a lot of ways, yeah, it is. At least the first few movies are. But I think the only movie that I kind of like is the last one. And the reason I like it the most is because it goes to show all these really kick-ass abilities that the vampires have. Like, they all have unique abilities as vampires. And there are, you know, different kinds of vampires. There are ones that are, like, very elitist, very, you know, let's call them conservative, that they like preserving their species and don't like mixing with mortals. And there are others that are more accepting. Like, it's that sort of difference to the legends of vampires that I liked more than the whole romance thing. And I think a lot of you will agree. But just the concept of vampires and vampire bats themselves, I don't know, it's always been super cool to me. The fact that they can transform, that they can, like, confuse you, just how charming they can be, how elegant they are. And I wanted to reflect that in this piece. I wanted to reflect sort of the elegance because, again, he is my favorite character. And it's been a long time since I've dressed up as Count Dracula, but I feel like if I did now as an adult, I'd look ridiculous. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll try it again, but I do think I'd look just awful. I wish I had a photo of me dressed up as Dracula from when I was a kid to show you, but this is the final piece and the very final piece for Creepy Month 2017. I'm not done doing these speed paint discussions. I will still be doing a hell of a lot more when it comes to the Everything Wrong with Thumbnails So be sure to check those out. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what your favorite Universal movie monster is, and which one of my pieces from Creepy Month 2017 was your favorite? Which one did you think I did the best on? Which one do you think I could have improved a little bit more on? I would love to hear what you guys think of everything I've done. For me personally, I'm not sure. I have a lot of different favorite ones for different reasons. You know, like some I think I like because they look so much like the characters I'm trying to draw. Others, I like what I did. Like, for example, this one, I love out of the 3 that I did for Universal Movie Monster Week, I like this one the most because it shows the most body, and it shows just like, it's the imagery is just there. You can't confuse who I'm trying to draw. But again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next year, or in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and stay awesome. This is Char5, signing off.